Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful, Allah's peace and blessings be upon the Holy Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, and his immaculate Ahlul Bayt and household. Dear brothers and sisters all around the world, Assalamu alaikum and welcome to yet another edition from series of Quran and Today's Life. In these very sessions, we are trying to have a Quranic approach to some Quranic concepts with a different and newer look. In fact, these thematic exegesis of the Holy Quran, we hope to be beneficiary for all the beings in the world, and specifically for the Muslims and the followers of the Holy Book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have been talking about the different stages of a traveler into the spiritual journey towards perfection. We define some 7 stages, starting from yaqdah, or awareness, and we moved to repentance, tawbah, and then to the 3rd stage, which was mortification, and after that we talked about the poverty in our previous session. In fact, in this desirable sort of poverty, we mean that a human being should not leave all his worldly desire, rather than to be moderate, to take account of different things in his world, in his worldly affairs, and to in fact be cautious of the desires that his family and different family members have there, and he should keep them all into account. Inshallah, in this verse session we will be continuing our discussion on the other stage, or the next stage in the spiritual journey, that is the stage of solitude or khalwa. For this purpose, as you might have already been following these programs, we were joined by Sheikh Maysam Qasim, Islamic scholar and lecturer in Al-Mustafa International University. Well, Sheikh Maysam, thank you for accepting our invitation, and salam to you, and we're ready to have your introductory remarks.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. I also want to say salam to the dear viewers of the program. I hope the discussion will go well and will be useful,
inshallah,
for all.
For sure it will be.
In fact, Quran says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَذَرِ الَّذِينَ اتَّخَذُوا دِينَهُمْ لَعِبًا وَلَهْوًا وَغَرَّتْهُمُ الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا وَذَكِّرْ بِهِ. In chapter An'am, the 6th chapter, verse 70, Quran says, leave alone those who take their religion for play and diversion, and whom the life of this world has deceived. So, Quran, and in fact, Quran is as a guide, as a map on the road of a spiritual journey.
True.
Is indicating to the other station, or Karwansarai, for Salek.
Yeah.
In this manzil,
the topic that we're going to talk about today, inshallah, the 5th manzil, or the 5th, let's say, station, which is the stage of solitude.
Yeah.
Or khalwa. Is this, verse that you just recited relevant to the topic?
Yes, and I'm trying to explain the relevance between this verse and how this verse implies solitude.
True.
Quran says, leave alone those who are playing with the religion, who took their religion to play with, who are in fact deceived by worldly affairs. They are ready to put anything aside for the sake of their worldly affairs. And in fact here, Quran in this verse is indicating to one obstacle.
Mm-hmm.
Through, and the journey, and each journey, for example, on the trip from one city to the other, by nowadays the transportation means, like, you, in your car when you're traveling, there might be some obstacles on your way. I don't know how, but maybe because of some problems, the road has been is being repaired, or so there might be some obstacles that they leave you, they stop you from continuation of your your journey, your trip to somewhere.
Very true.
The spiritual journey is the same. People, in fact, Salih on his way toward Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after the previous manzil, which was faqr, which was poverty, sees it very necessary to have solitude with Allah. How? The relevance, first let me clarify the relevance between the
previous
fifth,
stations?
and this one,
So,
the fourth and fifth.
before you go to the relevance of this, can you please tell us what does this solitude mean first? I mean, what does this khalwa mean? Is it with, with oneself, or with God, or with other people, or from other people? Are we in fact choosing this solitude to be from the people? If at the very beginning give us a very, clear-cut picture of the topic, after that, inshallah, we shall be listening very exactly to what you will say.
To have a simple clarification of solitude, it should be said that solitude is a kind of empowering the relationship between Salih and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Solitude is just enlarging that hole between Salih and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To prepare a ground for the next steps, is to have deeper and deeper and deeper understanding from oneself and the relation between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Exactly.
And this is a simple explanation of solitude.
So,
but how does it take place? How does solitude happen? Solitude, khalwa, which is opposite to jalwa, it means you prepare. Salih comes to the state and level and stage in which sees it necessary. If the viewer remembers the previous station, the previous manzil,
poverty.
There, Salih saw him needy to Allah's grace. Salih saw him faqir ila Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أنتم الفقراء وهو الغني والله هو الغني الحميد. Then, when you see this kind of relationship, then you see the necessity of more relationship, more relevance to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then you see it, Salih sees it necessary also to have, to empower this relationship. How? By khalwa, by solitude. What does this solitude mean? Let me go into details more.
Please.
In fact, in different religions, we have this concept. The concept of solitude in Christianity, Hinduism, or Buddhism is to prepare a separate place from other people to be alone.
True.
For a long, long, long time. Like people go for, and they call it also a kind of mortification. One goes and stays somewhere alone without any kind of relationship with others in order to focus on divine affairs, like, the essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like worshipping and worshipping and worshipping without doing anything else, without eating.
So this solitude in other religions is just for the worship of Allah? Or no, they may have some other intentions there?
In fact, they have also other practical rulings in this regard.
But it was basically for the sake of worshipping Allah?
Yes, but basically it is for worshipping Allah. And in fact, this is very similar to what we have in Islam, but not in that way necessarily.
Yeah.
So look, the spiritual journey toward Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As the verse says, وَذَرَ الَّذِينَ اتَّخَذُوا, leave them, put them aside, leave them alone. Leave who alone? avoid meeting and seeing who? This is the question. And the answer to this question enlightens the concept of
Solitude.
solitude for us.
So what is the answer, please?
In fact, in this station, in this manzil, Salik sees that, I am needed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but there are other people trying to play with me, trying not to let me be a good servant for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are playing with the religion. They are keeping me away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are playing the role of those obstacles, as I mentioned, like stopping, repairing the road in between two cities.
Very true.
So, here, Salih comes to see the necessity of khalwa, solitude between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To empower, yes, the main act, the main ritual of this step, of this stage, is worshipping, even in Islam.
Mm-hmm.
Then Salih sees it necessary, more necessary, to empower, the worshipping acts. And this is what I'm going to speak about more. Like Salatul Layl, like night prayer. Then Salih cannot leave Salatul Layl even for a single night.
Mm-hmm.
Then Salatul Layl becomes necessary, wajib, obligatory for Salih.
Mm-hmm.
And this obligation is not a kind of obligation put by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is something that is being necessitated by Salih himself or herself.
So a question here. You said that solitude should take place in a certain time and place mostly. Can this place and time be the time that we, for example, may stand up for the night prayer, Salatul Layl, or the place that we may have this prayer, or no? It should be, for example, some daytime or some certain night time.
In fact, there are some priorities for the time and places, but it doesn't mean that these are the necessary and appointed ones. That without that time, without that place, one cannot have solitude. It doesn't mean so, but there are some priorities. There are lots of narrations and hadith in this regard, mentioning the night as the best time for the faithful.
Very true.
That's because at night there is, no one can disturb Salih, no one and nothing can avoid Salih from that great, powerful relationship between him or her and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Very true.
So night
can be one of the choices.
Yeah, and in hadith we have also that Salih likes winter more because in winter nights are longer, and Salih has more time to connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
So he can make best use of his winter time and winter nights for the sake of having more, let's say, solitude with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much. Inshallah, we shall be continuing our discussion on the stage of solitude and the rest of our discussion after a very short break. If you don't mind, we can. Please stay tuned. We'll be back in a few seconds. Welcome back to Quran in Today's Life and our discussion about the different stages of spiritual journey towards perfection. And the fifth stage, or let's say the fifth station, which was the stage of solitude, khalwa. In fact, selecting a very certain time and place for the worship of Allah, to be alone and to be with Allah and to pass the time. with different rituals as the respected expert of the show talked about. Now, can you please tell us about the place? You talked about the time. How about the place? Should it be certain, and should it be in some certain places that has some, let's say, other emphasis there, or no? It can be every place.
Yes, for place also we have some recommendations for Salik, recommended by Ahlul Bayt, infallible Imams, and the Holy Prophet also.
True.
The conduct of the Holy Prophet and Ahlul Bayt shows us that they also had some priorities for the place, also for their solitude. Let me first start with the Holy Prophet of Islam. He himself also, the story of revelation started from what place was the starting point, beginning
Hira
point?
cave.
It was a cave, and it was a place for his solitude.
Very nice.
It was not, everywhere. It was not the way that the Prophet worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sometimes at home, sometimes at, in public places, sometimes in a cave, sometimes elsewhere. And then Allah chose one of these places.
But this, kind of worship in the cave was for a certain period of time, but not forever.
I didn't say that the solitude must be
in a place forever.
In a place forever, or
so it can be changed.
It can be changed.
True.
But there must be a place also. Not there must be, there might be a place, and there should be a certain place for solitude for any period of time. Like what? Like the cave we mentioned. Like a certain place at home. In some narrations we have this recommendation that a faithful mu'min has to appoint a certain place for himself or herself to pray on, in order to have that place as a testimony for himself or herself at that stage, in hereafter. There, mu'min needs some other mu'mineen, some other faithful, some maybe other places, maybe some books. Holy Quran is one of those testimonies who can testify that this mu'min was a worshipper of Allah when he was alive.
Is it that why that we have in hadith and traditions that try to say your prayers in different masajids, so that all of them give testimony for the day?
Thank you for your good question.
Judgment?
Here also a controversy. In fact, not because of what you mentioned, but because the essence of solitude. Because we have many hadith about, not to be with people. And we have also some other hadith mentioning that, you have to stay with people for a certain amount of time. The way these two different attitudes toward the issue, to gather these two different attitudes together, we have to look at one nice hadith that says, "Kun fin nas wa la takun ma'ahum." We have lots of hadith and even verse of Quran that and that the verse says that you have to say all of your prayers in any mosque that you can. وَأَقِيمُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ عِنْدَ كُلِّ مَسْجِدٍ. Go and say your prayers in all of كُلِّ masjid, in all of mosques. You have to find even different mosques for praying. The way we can understand these two different type of recommendations from behalf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam is that we see that, in fact, based on the hadith that I quoted to, kun fin nas is to be with people, is to live among people, and not to be with their bad deeds. not to join them when they are not on the right path.
Can it be the meaning of solitude here?
Yes, of course. Solitude is
So
staying with people, but not being with them. Staying is living with them. In fact, when you go to mosque, when you have some like congregational prayers, okay, go for prayer, go for these public actions, public ibadat, like Hajj also, and like other things mentioned in Islam that needs a kind of accompanying people with what they do, like the examples that I presented.
The purpose of my question was that, as you said, if it can be the definition of solitude, so there is no necessity to have, a certain or let's say a clarified place or time. We cannot see in this hadith that you just mentioned. Is it true or not?
In fact, people, mu'min, faithful, salik, the traveler of the spiritual journey, is the one who specifies some specific times for his solitude.
Yeah.
And then, I'm just trying to simplify the issue.
Yeah, please.
And also sometimes during the day to stay, to pass with other mu'mineen. Like, it is very recommended to say salat as I recited the verse of Quran about it. وَأَقِيمُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ عِنْدَ كُلِّ مَسْجِدٍ. And also وَذَرَ الَّذِينَ اتَّخَذُوا دِينَهُمْ. So you have to live with people, to go to the public places like this, to stay, to pass some of your time with people. But you also have to be very careful about your own solitude, about that specific time that even a mu'min also cannot disturb you for worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
I think my question was not completely received here. What I mean here is that, can we say by solitude, we mean that while you are inside the people, you have a very, let's say, exact and strong relation with your Lord, with your God, so that no one knows about it. While you are in the people, in the gatherings, or you are in assemblies, can it be a sort of solitude that, without having any special place, without having any specified time here, can it be solitude while I am with you, but my heart is somewhere else? I am with you, I am with people, but I'm thinking about God, what the power of God, and inside myself, I'm in fact worshipping Allah.
In fact, what you're mentioning is a part of solitude. That when you are with people, then you have to stay aside, deep down from people. But you also have to, as a salik, in this stage. What you're mentioning is right, but not for salik. Yes, normally people, when they live together, they have to consider themselves in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and when someone is going astray, not to join that person. But this is only a part of the story for salik.
So a specific time should be given that.
This is what I'm emphasizing on.
Very true.
Not me. This is the Gnostics. This is what the Gnostics are emphasizing on.
Because
salik has to have a certain place, a certain time to specify to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
The reason that I raised that question was that, since I know that whatever I have inside myself can be regarded as solitude, as you said, no. So
it could be a part of solitude.
A part of it. But that, a special time and place should be noted there.
It also must be involved.
Since we have some minutes to finalize our discussion, what else has been left from the concept of solitude here? Any important issue to be regarded inside here?
In fact, I just want to add this issue, this story to our discussion. That, generally, salik here, the difference that salik has here on this station with himself or herself before this station is that there must be a time added to the times specified for worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before. Mm-hmm. Here, Salik needs more supplication, needs more recommended prayers like night prayer, as I mentioned.
Yeah.
Salik here also needs to cut the relationship with some of people who had relationship with before.
Exactly.
Like, and this is the meaning of kun fin nas wa la takun ma'ahum.
Thank you.
This is how Salik can cut himself from the obstacles and empower his relationship with Allah.
Exactly, as you said, it is in fact, yeah, please.
And then one more point which is necessary to be mentioned here. As I'm remembering at the, in the first programs, I emphasized on one important fact, that Salik never goes beyond moderation. And here also, moderation must be observed. That never Salik has to observe moderation, never exceed, never does something that is considered like, cutting from people or so. And he also must observe this issue, that staying with people in all cases might corrupt his spiritual journey, might lead him not to continue his work.
Thank you very much. And I think it's quite natural to pay and spend more time and, in fact, ibadah towards your Lord, because when you start feeling in love with someone or falling in love with someone, it's natural that you need to pay, or spend more time with him or her.
That's it. Thank you for your nice
You're
example.
welcome. So we talk about the stage of solitude, khalwa, in a spiritual journey toward perfection. And we talked about different things and different elements in this solitude. And I think the most important factor that was notable to be considered for the viewers was that we should have, in this stage for sure, a special time and specific place for our, in fact, solitude before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We shall be continuing our discussion with the other stages of spiritual journey to our perfection in our next sessions. Once again, I thank you all and the respected expert of the show, and invite you to join us in our next program. Till then, have a very good time. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.